Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the workshop. The topic of this presentation will be the more the operational part of the science mesh, and more in particular, it will be the federated infrastructure. I mean, we have a set of different enterprise file sync and share services, also called EFSSs, but all of them together have to be glued into to one infrastructure where you can share data and applications and what have you. Well, first of all, I'd like to express my thanks to all the people in my work package, but also the colleagues of other work packages in this project for their valuable input. Also think that the stuff I'm going to talk about today is still work in progress. Some topics are still subject to discussion, so things may change. But let's say we are now, it's a 3-year project. We are just 1 year down the line, so 2 more years of fun to go. Okay, well, federated infrastructure. Basically, what we have done is just dealing, or what we are doing is dealing with all the aspects that are related to federating all these resources together. And there you have well, let's say a number of topics that play a role here. Foremost, it's AAI, authentication, authorization infrastructure, also monitoring, accounting. There's also procedures, OLAs, things involved, security, of course. And well, this project is called CS3 Mesh for EOSC, and the EOSC is not there for nothing. So it's our ambition to integrate with the European Open Science Cloud. And of course, support for users and sites is also within the scope. And as you might imagine, it's not just about operations and technical issues, it's procedural things that we have to address as well. What absolutely is key here is that we want to keep things as lightweight as possible to reduce the amount of bureaucracy to a bare minimum. So let's say we want to keep it as lightweight as possible, but not lighter. There should be something still there that is sufficient enough to keep everything up and running. Another thing is that we will also want to do for these purposes, for the federation purposes, we wanted to do as little software development as possible. So the focus was also to reuse as many components as we possibly can, already existing components. Okay, well, starting with AAI. Well, as Pedro has already mentioned, it's all about sharing data and applications. And when we started out with this project, we were thinking in the direction of, well, things like federated identity and group management systems that we can choose. And of course, the system that we are building is able to interact with will be able to interact with such systems. So that's not an issue here. But of course, these things are incredibly difficult to build, and also concepts of what is a group or what can a group do is not really compatible from one service to another. So there are issues there that need to be resolved. On the other hand, we only have 3 years to deliver our results. So we took a more pragmatic route. And basically, what we thought is that the only thing that a sync and share service need is access to identity and group information. And that may come from a federated system, but it might as well not. So we just started from there. So we just started to look at our use cases. And we just found out that for what we intend to do, we do not really need federated AI systems. We can do already with the stuff that we have. So basically what we are focusing on is that users are sharing resources among each other, but a remote user does not necessarily need to be able to log in to some other remote system and have full access to all the functionality that that service offers. No. If I would like, say, share a file with you, that only thing I need to do is provide you with some token in one way or another to give you access to this file or service. You don't need an account on my system. So using that idea, we started to take things further. And basically, we invented an invitation workflow which takes care of this matter. So what we did in this this approach is you do not really need to be a member of a huge scientific community. Let's say if a group of researchers at the University of Harderwijk wants to collaborate with a group of researchers at the ETH in Zurich, you can just do so without being part of one huge e-infrastructure centered around your discipline or whatever. So that's basically the idea. It's really a bottom-up approach. And also, of course, that if you, let's say, have some federated group management of an internationally based organization, you end up with issues related to, let's say, business models and sustainability. And the good thing about the Science Mesh is that it consists of services that is already sustainable. So this is just the pragmatic approach that we took on this. And yeah, the invitation workflow, we are going to demonstrate it in a demo later on. But it's all based on the Open Cloud Mesh APIs that would allow sync and share services to create and receive shares, and also send and receive notifications. I'm not going to say too much about this and move on, but this is the, let's say, the central building block that we're relying on. And this whole invitation workflow is basically at the very core of the Science Mesh. So the idea of this invitation workflow is you establish trust between two pairs of users without these users are required to know each other's IDs or the location of the enterprise file sync and share services that they have an account on. And it will enable them to share resources regardless of what that resource is, either being a data or applications. So in principle, how does it work? Well, let's say one person, let's say in this case Miroslav, wants to share resources with Hugo at CERN, and he sends an invitation either by email or whatever. And in this invitation contains some information. What Hugo at CERN does is part of the invitation also consists of a link. What Hugo at CERN does is clicking on the link and ends up into some kind of where are you from service at the source site at Chestnut, and select his sync and share service. And then Hugo logs into his own sync and share service and accepts the notification. And with accepting this notification, Hugo's identity on the CERN service, and also the, let's say, the CERN service itself, that information is sent along with the acceptance notification to the originating site. So this is how we establish a trust relationship. And based on that, you can share a lot of other stuff as well. Okay, the basic system architecture is just, of course, the sync and share services in themselves. The moment we have a very thin central part, which consists mainly of a central configuration database plus a number of monitoring services. This central configuration database has the mesh sites. There's also what we call an executive module that for the moment runs this where are you from service, but also you can, what can be implemented there is all kinds of sharing policy enforcement, so that your own site doesn't allow you to share data with whatever, or does. So, and basically the whole design consideration is to cache information, especially personal data, locally at sites to make everything GDPR compliant. So, and now I will move over to the video. Let me see. To give you a little demonstration of how things work. I have to mention that although what you're about to see now is all command line stuff, but the nice graphical interface will be worked on as well. But for now, we just have the command line stuff. But here it is.
We don't hear the audio, Ron.
Okay, how do we do this?
If you prefer, you can switch over to me.
Okay.
I have it ready.
Okay. Thanks, David.
Could you unshare your screen, please? I will share mine.
Done.
This video demonstration is part of project deliverable D21, and its accompanying report will be available on project's website. We have two users. Miroslav uses Cessnets on cloud and wants to share files with Hugo from CERN. Miroslav knows Hugo uses a sync and share system in his institution, but doesn't know which one and does not know his identity in the system. Miroslav doesn't know more than Hugo's private email address. Without the science mesh, this would be the beginning of a painful and long story. Let's see how the CS3 mesh can help Miroslav to share files with Hugo. In this demonstration, we show technical interoperability in the current state of development using command line interfaces. Of course, this will be hidden on the graphical interface for general users and will be integrated into their sync and share systems. Now, Miroslav opens the terminal. Miroslav logs into Cessnet's Riva interoperability platform service. Here we can see he's logged in. He uploads the file to be shared with Hugo into Cessnet's own cloud. The file is uploaded. Miroslav sends an invitation email to Hugo's private email address we shown previously to establish sharing trust between Miroslav and Hugo. Now Hugo received a mail. He opens his mailbox. Hugo receives an email from Miroslav, which contains an invitation to share files. To accept the invite, Hugo is asked to visit the following address, which leads to Cessnet's interoperability platform instance. To accept the invite, Hugo clicks the link to Cessnet's interoperability platform instance, picks out Sandbox out of providers available there. And now he's logging into his Sandbox service, which also reveals his user ID there. Sharing invitation is now accepted. Collaboration between Hugo and Miroslav can now begin as trust between both accounts has been established. Now Miroslav's service provider gains required knowledge about Hugo's remote account. Let's get back to Miroslav. Miroslav can now share files and directories with Hugo. Miroslav now offers a share of his demo directory to Hugo at Sandbox. He actually uses Hugo's private address to find the identity. Back at CERN, Hugo opens his terminal. Logs into his Sandbox account. And can now list received share invites, and he can see Miroslav's invitation. There is a pending share of demo folder from Miroslav's sync and share system at CESNET. Hugo can now accept or reject the sharing offer. As Hugo accepts the share has now been established. And as we can see, Hugo can now list shared files and can see the demo file shared from CESNET system. Hugo can now download the file to his local file system. Edit the file. And upload it back. He's now overwriting the original file that is shared from CESNET's own cloud instance. I can now switch back to Miroslav's desk. Miroslav can now see changes made by Hugo from CERN. He downloads the file, and indeed, the changes made by Hugo are there.
Okay, thank you, David.
You're welcome.
Okay.
And as I can see in the chat, lesson learned, don't play video over Zoom.
Yeah, it was also frozen here. Yeah. Maybe you can share the link so that people can watch it directly.
I have shared the link
So something
to the YouTube version of the video, which is
great.
probably also much better regarding sound quality. It doesn't have the overvoice. It's supposed that you can read it.
So, okay, let's proceed. Because of time, I just speed up a little bit. Of course, like Pedro already said, we're working on groups, sharing by groups, and it looks that that will be fairly similar to, let's say, shared data between individual persons. This is the monitoring and accounting system that we have built at the moment, the POC version. The basic components is the GOGDB, what you see upper left, that's the central registration. You also see the Mantix software that was developed in-house by the people from Münster. On the left side, you have mesh providers for sites, so you will supplying metrics to Prometheus. And there's also probes running. Those are accounting metrics, by the way. And there's also probes running to check for the availability of the sites, and through Blackboard exporter that is exposed to Prometheus, which displays everything in Grafana. And then everything will look something like this. I guess today you will see this kind of pictures more often. And also there is the availability monitoring of the mesh. Okay, what we're also working on is on the procedural side of stuff. How do we organize support in the mesh, security, operational things, downtime notifications, like I've already said, availability and reliability requirements on sites, procedures to, let's say, ingress new sites into the mesh. And also if sites want to stop being part of the mesh or are not in a shape that they're good enough to be part of the mesh, procedures around removing sites from the mesh. Also, what's under discussion is the governance of the whole mesh. Remind you that we want to restrict bureaucracy as much as possible, but the ideas that we have at the moment, that there's some kind of an executive board that will ratify or veto certain decisions. There is also a steering group which makes decisions, and of course there is the operational team running the central services. About integration with EOSC, I'm not going to say too much about this. This is also work on progress. If you want to know more about EOSC, please see Bob Jones' talk during the past conference, which details everything in a very nice details. A very essential part of that is the rules of participation. So the rules that you have to abide by in order to be part of the European Open Science Cloud. About IOP deployments, well, these are the sites that are currently part of the mesh, and we would most certainly very much welcome your site to be added to that list as well. So be all very welcome. And that's all from me. And later on, after this talk, there will be a presentation by Daniel, which will tell you how to join the mesh. So are there any questions? Then if not, I hand it over to you, Kuba.
Okay, so I'm not sure if everybody could really see in details how this invitation workflow works and what are the, but my question to people would be, do you see that this mechanism is sufficient for the use cases that you have, or not? Because there are some other ideas, of course, in the community, like, for example, having a global address or global phone book, which allows to look up people and other considerations. So this is my question. So I see Andreas. Sorry, I appear twice in Zoom because my computer goes crazy, so I am already doing a backup.
Yeah, I still don't find the raise hand button. It's not okay. in the participants and not in the reactions. I don't know. So the sync and share workflow, the share workflow is very nice, but it gets very interesting when there's services which are not EFSS involved. So, for example, we have OpenStack, which is going to be a service within our federation thing, and like mixing all those up and having groups which are persistent across different service types and so on. That's still an open question for our use case, but I'm not sure whether that's an issue at all within CF3 Mesh.
My quick reaction would be that essentially what was shown in this invitation workflow works through Riva, which is a microservice that you could actually also integrate in some other service, not necessarily only sync and share. that would be that could be an interesting possibility that I don't think that we actually considered in the project so far. But I think from the technical point of view, there would not be a constraint, or am I wrong?
Yeah, on this, we discussed in the past to have some kind of CS3 APIs and CSI driver for OpenStack. So basically, you can have the same, say, overview of groups, etc. But this was just some ideas floating around because we were focusing first on having this workflow. But if there is no momentum to have this type of developments, the project is open source, and we are happy to discuss ideas. And also, if you have or your team has some technical background, also even contributing with your hands.
Yeah, I'm planning to do that. I did promise it last year and then didn't follow up with it. But I guess we have to. And Riva seems like a good intermediate layer. I still don't know what exactly it does, but it seems quite nifty. And yeah, so like if I may ask another question concerning Riva, the authentication that was shown was a simple password username. Does it support other authentication protocols as well, like OIDC or SAML 2?
Yes, indeed. OpenID Connect was the first authentication protocol supported, but then we added other protocols because still some clients, or let's say some, I would call it like processes, stupid processes like robots accounts, service accounts, they are working on the basis of basic authentication. And we also have one which is based on accounts, so you can create tokens basically on behalf of the user to use. So the good thing is that this is completely flexible. Indeed, in my presentation, I have an example exactly for how to add more authentication mechanisms to the CS3 APIs and to Riva. So yeah, stay tuned.
Okay.
Okay, I see Giuseppe.
Yes, I was back to your point of whether this is sufficient or not. A little bit more around sharing with groups. Okay, I guess this is still in the works, but I can imagine that, I mean, typical example we have at CERN, a group is actually a mailing list with many people, and you want to have two different groups collaborate on something, on a project area. How do we do that? Because at that point, it's not really just an email, it's a mailing list. And so you have some, like the responsible that has to bring everybody. You see what I mean? This is more a question between me, Ugo, Ron. I mean, it's brainstorming. How do you see that?
Who would like to reply?
At the moment, how we see it, but David, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that the group information and also the what constitutes a group, if you want to share something with a target group, that relies with the target system, and also the management of that group is with that target system. So if you trust the person that manages the group at a remote site, you can just let's say hand over the responsibility of accepting this invite to the person managing that group. So that's basically the direction we are thinking about.
Yes, and if I may add to that, it depends on where your group is defined. If your group is just defined as a mailing list, you are probably out of luck. If your group is defined in a signature system and you want to share to that group, that then we have the scenario Ron described.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, we really wanted to reduce to spread around personal data over the mesh, as let's say to limit that as much as we can.
And it should be also noted that the group membership is evaluated at your site. Then, in that case, you have to be connected in the mesh and compliant with the policy and so on. But the trust is between the person who shares the resource and you as the site holding the definition of the group.
Okay, thanks.
But I think indeed the group management in general and the teams, distributed teams is a topic, still an active topic. So please feel free to join these discussions later on on our chats. So I have a question to the audience as well, which is from your perspective as a person that provides a service, right? You're maybe running a sync and share service or some other service. What would be your main operational, let's say, considerations for joining such a federated federation of services? What would be your main concerns or main points that would be the most important for you from that point of view? So I'm not only talking about connecting your test instance, which is easy, but connecting your production instance with all the users there, with all the data, with all the maybe quality of service that you need to respect, or SLAs and things like this. So anybody has some thoughts? Oh, Thilo, please.
Thank you for giving me the word. So my main concerns could be or would be, so how to support probably user questions, because if somebody wants to use Science Mesh like this, where is support if questions will arise? So we are just running the sync and share service, but my team is not at this point enough or staffed enough in order to take a lot of questions if they will arise. What are the experiences within this community? And do we have something like a frequently asked questions or support for within videos? So Ron, your video was really nice, and it was a video explaining how to connect. But do we have, for example, also videos how to collaborate, or giving an example of what is a scientific use case, very easily explained, so that the people also want to use it, yeah, to advertise it a little more in form of a use case? That would be helpful. But my constraints are mainly the support, because at the end, our names are underneath a sync and share service, and if support questions will arise, we have to deal with them. And you know, this is very time consuming. Thank you.
Well, Thilo, thanks a lot. This is really a great question. Actually, thanks a lot also for the suggestion. We should take the note for the videos about the use cases. Now, anybody would like to answer? I can provide some kind of a high-level idea about some aspects of the user support, but I'm pretty sure people would perhaps want to make it more detailed. Can you hear me? Can you hear me well? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, me hear you.
So for what concerns usability, so the user support that may come from the usability of the interface, I think the main idea is to make it as a part of your already existing user experience in your sync and share system. So on the same way as now people are able to share within their organization, let's say the basic idea, the basic interface would be the same, and would be essentially also part of what the EFSS platform offers as well. So part of that documentation and part of that logic would actually be integrated well with your native EFSS platform that your users already know. So this is the kind of, I think, one of the principles that we would like to have in this project. Then there, of course, could be questions, support questions that relate not to the usability, but for example, to the fact that maybe some shares are not available, and this is maybe not because some issue at your service, but maybe of some unavailability on some other service in the federation. That's a fair point to think about that as well. To some extent, I think it's from that point of view, it is important that we have this dashboard that was already shown, but will be also shown later, so that it's easy to understand what's the operational state of the entire federation. So it would essentially be easy to reason about possible problems or possible failures in this distributed environment. But that could be essentially providing some kind of input to the subsequent user support process. But I think Ron wants to say something. I'm stepping into his area.
No, it's not a problem. Yeah, basically we're federating sync and share services, each having their own user base. And I mean, you already have a support channel for your users. So, which means that if somebody at ETH and Zurich encounters a problem, he comes to your help desk. And of course, then people start to troubleshoot. And if it could be related to a problem at another site, then it will be taken up further. So basically, we have already some sort of let's say, a help desk support process in place. Yeah, and also the question is, how far is this going to scale up, and is that good enough? Yeah, that's a question that that remains to be answered.
Okay, okay. There's a raised hand. There's also a question on the chat. I don't know which one was first, but David, you wanted to intervene maybe on the same topic?
Well, actually, I have an addition to what Ron said. So thank you. We are the important part. What Ron said was we are building a federation of sync and share systems. And the federation must also necessarily be documented, and we have to have federation metadata that also contains point of contacts for user support and for administration. So we expect this to be well documented and accessible. And of course, your users will go to your support. And if there is an issue to solve with a partner in the mesh, then you will have an easy way to find who to contact. And there is also a proposal of an escalation procedure in case this gets stuck. But I believe Daniel's presentation will make it a bit more clear later on.
Okay, thank you very much, David. There is a question from Karina. Would you like me to read it, or would you like to speak?
Speak. Thanks, Kuba. Hi, I'm Karina Kemp from AARNet. We're pretty excited about being a part of this, but there is an underlying concern about we invest in doing it from our side of the world, and then what's the ongoing sustainability of it going to be? Like, how do we keep it going? We see there's massive value because we want our researchers to be able to connect internationally, but this is a concern.
Ron, would you like to take it?
Well, yeah, I can take it. The good thing is that we're already sustainable. Currently, the mesh consists of sites that are already funded, are already being paid for, have already paying customers. Some of them are funded from their own institute or from their own funding bodies. So basically, this is not that much of an issue. You would agree with this answer?
There's Gavin as well, please.
Yeah, so just to come back to sort of the discussion around a central database, the GocDB, and that having to be hosted somewhere and live with somebody and be maintained by somebody and operated by somebody, and there's a cost associated with that. So I guess, when we look at sustainability, it's not sort of the sustainability of the federation. We don't doubt that, but on the coverage of those ongoing costs.
Yeah, that has to be taken care of, but that's also the reason why we want to keep the effort that goes into this at a bare minimum. So yeah, there will be costs, but we try to keep this as low as we possibly can.
Sorry, go on, Ron. Okay, yeah, done. So just to add to Ron that the database, the central database, the monitoring system, etc. So far has been running distributed across the partners of the Science Mesh. For example, monitoring is run by Munster. Then Chestnut runs the central single sign-on service. CERN runs some repositories to store releases and distributions, etc. So far, each partner has taken a little bit of responsibility to maintain the service for now. And then at the end of the project, there are 3 exits, right? One is that the project is dead, no one gives, no one cares for it, right? Which is the one that we don't want. Other is that some commercial partner may take basically the running of the service, or that the existing partners will like to dedicate resources to maintain it, as they have already the knowledge. I think the important is to make sure that these systems are well documented. So in case there is a knowledge transfer to happen to other commercial partners or to other external institutions, the transfer is as smooth as possible to ensure the sustainability of the system.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other? Alan, please.
Yes, there are regulations about how long data should be sustained. Will those affect the mesh at all?
Do you mean regulations like if a user leaves an organization and then he has a right to be forgotten, for example?
Well, but there are those regulations, but also that EU-funded research must be available for, I don't know, I can't remember what it is, but it's something like 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So if something is put on the mesh, will it be available like that?
Well, okay, this is a very good question. I'm a little bit in the dark here, but if I was to answer this, I would say that I'm not 100% sure if there isn't a difference between EU-funded research and using EU-funded infrastructures. So probably, EU-funded research is, I don't know, you use European money to buy a microscope or to pay for some people to work on your research project, and that produces some data or some papers that have to be let's say that should obey this kind of regulations. And the other thing is that you're essentially using some infrastructure that is not directly in your line of research. So this is what I could perhaps answer as a preliminary analysis of your question. And then I see also Bob suggests, for example, there are of course services for data preservation, and he links to one here in the chat. So so in case you need or you want to preserve your data, it is not excluded that some of the services that deal with data preservations will also be interfaced and accessible from the mesh.
It is actually the case. We're working on
maybe the case already. So Maciek, can you say something about that?
Maybe I'm not the best person, but I just want to mention if you need your data to be kept for years, there's already a work ongoing within the mesh in Work Package 4 on applications and users, where we try to interface to. We're working on interfacing to the long-term archival systems, and let's say, yeah, you can use this approach to enable long-term preservation within the mesh. So it's kind of on the radar of the mesh already.
And Alan, have some.
But you should also take into consideration that historically, sync and share was mostly used for the not to say temporary data, but as a working space, and that was one of the basic use cases of sync and share stuff. Of course, some people use this for long-term, for mid-term, for long-term storage, and so on. However, if you really want this additional procedures and let's say things like creating and keeping or publishing metadata on your data you want to preserve, this is a little bit another story, and this needs special treatment somehow. Yeah? And we also work on that in WP4.
Okay.
So WP4 is the one to look at.
So I propose maybe we move on, because we originally foreseen this workshop to be half a day, even though maybe it was a mistake. Maybe we should have